Welcome to Argumentative Writing, a Part 4 lecture. We're going to start, as always, with our screen share. And let me get this pulled up nice and big for you. So this time we're going to look at organizing your research for your argumentative essay. So on the agenda, we're going to look at reviewing the steps that you're going to take and organizational strategies and types. This is actually a very short lecture, as some of what you need is covered in another segment. And I'll be sure to try and include those links for you so that you have everything you need. Let's recap what you're doing with this massive undertaking. You're looking at having to generate enough content to fill the page requirements for this paper. That could vary depending on your class and your professor. When you look at the page length requirements, they oftentimes do not include your works cited or resources page. That means that your page count is just for the content you are generating, the content that you are compiling and writing. To some who sit and stare at the blank page with a cursor blinking mockingly at them, it can seem like a daunting task. And no, my cursor has never mocked me, not even once in all my years as an author. If the sarcasm wasn't obvious, let me spell it out for you. The blank page can be scary, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't matter what your page count for this assignment is. If you have the right tools and the right preparations, then you have everything you need. What are those tools? The first is to generate your thesis statement. By this time, you should have examined enough information from all sides of the topic, not just yours, to be able to generate a solid thesis using the tools and tips provided in the thesis lecture. As I have a whole separate lecture for the thesis statement, I'm going to refer you to that segment for guidance on writing your thesis. You should have also gathered your data with that help to support those blueprint of reasons that you're arguing for in your paper. So this blueprint of reasons actually becomes key to your organization, which leads us to your next step, outlining. No matter what format of outline you select or how you choose to implement your organization, having something is what is going to lead your paper to pour forth from your fingertips and fill that blank page, and the next, and the next, and the next. And you'll be able to do it with more ease than you think. That being said, let's dig into these steps. So now that you have your thesis and your sources, you need to learn how to apply the information you have found to your paper and find a way to organize your thoughts. For this, I have a few different methods for you to consider. But why organize everything now? The paper isn't due this week. Let's face it, if you don't want to be the student who's stuck digging through 20 carefully selected sources that are spread out across a living room floor amid Legos and Cheerios, while your toddler dances his way through your pile of unorganized research, and not have any idea of which source had that one quote you really wanted. You know the one quote about the thing that proved the stuff you were wanting to prove? No. I have no idea what that feeling is like because I have never done that before. Yeah, an 18-page graduate level literary analysis paper, 2 primary sources, and about 18 articles that all supported my thesis, each one carefully selected, but no organizational means to keep anything straight in my own head. Only 5 pages completed, and only 1 day left to finish up while I sat at home with both of my kids and no extra adults in the house to help out. I sure could have used some form of organization to get through it all. Not to worry, that won't be you. Well, the toddler part might be, I can't help you there, But I do have a few organizational techniques that I'm going to tell you about, which will help with the paper, organizing, and finding that information that you need when you need it. From there, you can select the one that's going to work best for you. So the first two methods are really great for those who already have strong writing and those who already know how to use their writing tools. It's the basic outline and the sentence outline. The first being the basic outline. This is what most old school professors expect when you turn in a paper. It's the Roman numerals for the subtopics, capital letters for your supports within those subtopics, and normal numbers for elaboration or explanation for each of those supports. For a standard organizer, this one's fairly straightforward and easy to use if your brain works that way. Next is the sentence outline. This is the same as the basic outline in construct. The difference is that instead of perfectly paralleled fast notes for reference for each item, you would instead use full sentences. For the individual who's more of a linear thinker and doesn't want to have to mess with the parallel structure at each level of the outline, this is a great option. Your third option is the pie method. And it's an interesting format that many students have found helpful in constructing their argument and even deconstructing the arguments that they evaluate. Some students find the ease of this format to be their best option. Now, if you're more of a visual learner like I am, then the next two are really for you. Next, there's the index card game, and I will admit to you right now that it's a lot of work up front, but it can save you on the back end with less need for revisions. This is a manipulative tool where you can actually move pieces of your paper around and evaluate if you have enough for each subtopic before you even begin the writing process. In addition to this, you can make sure you have everything you need for your in-text citations, that you're verifying your source usage and synthesizing your information, and that your subtopics are all well balanced. Sound too good to be true? Well, it is true. And you don't have to use actual index cards if you don't want to. You can actually generate these in Word. For the game though, you'll want to cut them apart, print them out, cut them apart, and then I cover the technique for this and its uses and benefits in a separate lecture. You can follow along in that lecture if this is what you're going to use. Finally, there's the graphic organizer. These are downloadable templates that you can use to help you construct what data you want for each paragraph. Don't worry, I have samples for you as well on how to use those templates. This can help the individual who needs a strong visual and doesn't want to spend the time it would take to do the index cards, or the person who's more comfortable keeping everything in digital format. With the outline, that basic outline, really what we have here is a possible basic outline that could be used for each paragraph that you plan to implement for your subtopics. You would start by listing your reason as a Roman numeral, and then indenting and listing out your relevant evidence with in-text citation, thank me later, your explanation of how this evidence supports your stance and what it's really showing. Then you'd have your counterclaim, or list of evidence of what the other side would have to say about this specific point, which is then followed by your rebuttal, or the data that shows that your stance is correct and the explanation on how that data proves that your stance is correct. This is repeated for each point you wish to make for each individual subtopic. Sound like a lot of work? Well, honestly, any pre-planning is going to be a lot of work. Next is the sentence outline. It's very much the same, as the basic outline with just a few more items thrown in. Those few more items are you're using whole sentences, and you might even be including the transitions. I've got a couple of samples for you that you can use as a basis if this is what you would like to use for your pre-planning. Next is the pie organization. And the pie organization is embraced by many campuses for research writing and is rather similar to the normal outline. For this form of organization, you're creating a pie for each paragraph you want in your paper, or point, information, explanation. You can create a document much like the outline shown for each paragraph that you plan to include. Instead of the Roman numerals and letters, you would instead have pi for each individual point you raise that supports your thesis, the information that supports this point, and the explanation you would provide to show this information supports the claim. If you decide to go this route, the very first thing you should do in your organizer is to include your point. This comes from your thesis statement as you examine one of your blueprint of reasons. Remember that you might need to have a few paragraphs for each blueprint. That means a few pie items per subtopic. Each one of these pie items will have the point you're trying to make, the specific piece of information, your quote, summary, or paraphrase, with in-text citation that supports your point, and then your explanation. Repeat this form for each piece of information you have. The one caution that I have for you here is that this does not really offer space to insert your counterclaims, so be aware of that. Next is the index card game. For the index card game, I'm again going to refer you to the lecture that covers this format and how to use it. Finally, I have a graphic organizer for you. This is a great alternative to the index card game. This organizer is not the full length that you would need for a complete paper, but it gives you a clear idea of how you can use it. It's very much like the outline and the sentence outline in that as you fill it in with your information, you can actually kind of create this Word document in a table, in Word, and really visualize what's going on. Each individual row, straight across, becomes a paragraph. As I'm a strong proprietor of not having the 5-paragraph essay, you will need more than 3 rows. You could do 3 rows per subtopic. This is a much better way to get you to that final page length. Truth be told, you might need more than 3 rows per subtopic. The great thing about this organizer is that if you create a separate table for each subtopic in your Word document, you can visibly see if your subtopics are balanced. That means you can see if you have the same amount of focus for the first subtopic as you do for the last subtopic. You can also see immediately where your holes might be. If not every square gets filled in with something, that means you might be missing some information and might possibly need some more research. Another of the benefits of this specific graphic organizer is that it can be a huge time saver when you go to write your actual paper. You can also move some of the columns around as needed when considering the organization of your paper. For example, when you're writing your paragraphs, you might find that you only need 1 counterclaim per subtopic. If that's the case, you might decide to use the counterclaim one as a whole paragraph, and then all of the points that you have collected as your rebuttal. Sounds like a smart move to me. This would allow you to disprove the opposition and strengthen your stance. What I've done for you is to create 2 different graphic organizers that reflect these 2 different styles. If you opt to use one of them, I recommend that you select the one that's going to fit your topic, your learning modality, and your writing style. One of the other benefits of this format is that you're going to be able to see right away if you have balance in your sources. In the relevant evidence column right here, you should be including your in-text citations. By doing so, you're making less work for yourself and giving yourself an instant visual to ensure there is no bias. All you have to do is look down the relevant evidence column through all of your subtopics to see if you have everything coming from one author or source. Do you have a balance and synthesis that includes multiple sources? Or are you relying too heavily on just one? You can use this same technique when you glance through for your counterclaim. Did you fairly represent the opposition by using a variety of strong, valuable sources? Or do you rely too heavily on one source, or perhaps sources that weren't peer-reviewed and strong? The last benefit to this is if you decide to move your information around. Let's say that the bottom row for subtopic 2 would be better suited at the top of that subtopic. This visually shows you exactly what information would be moved without you having to spend hours in revision on a paper that you already typed out, trying to decide. Instant review with a strong visual that will ensure you can manipulate your data the way you want prior to the construction of a paper, well, you really can't beat that kind of a time saver. I'm going to go ahead and move into a new screen share. So this is my own graphic organizer, and this is for my paper. So this is using the exact same graphic organizer that I have created for you and putting it to the test. First, always start with your thesis. You need to have your limited topic. Let's see. The reconstruction of my online composition courses will enhance student understanding of the content, create a more universal design in the online platforms, and benefit student writing through a deeper understanding and the application of the concepts covered. Limited topic. The reconstruction of my online courses. I would say that's a fairly narrow scope. Check. Stance. I am saying that doing this is going to create these 3 outcomes. I am very sure of that because I used will, not should. Check. And my blueprint of reasons. There are my 3 for my blueprint of reasons. Enhance student understanding, create universal design, benefit student writing. They're all parallel. Next, you'll break your thesis into 3 subtopics for an easier time managing and understanding your research and your own writing. After all, if you don't know what you're trying to say, your audience certainly won't know either. You do this by using your blueprint of reasons and listing them after each subtopic heading in your graphic organizer. For example, enhance student understanding of the content with course reconstruction. So, enhance student understanding of the content, course reconstruction. Check. I have something from my blueprint and I have my limited topic. Awesome. Subtopic 2, creating a more universal design to make materials accessible to all levels and types of learners is the best method of course reconstruction. Course reconstruction, check. Creating universal design, check. Subtopic 3, reconstruction of the course and its materials will benefit student writing through a deeper understanding of the application of the concepts covered. Reconstruction of the course, that's my limited topic, check. Benefit student writing through deeper understanding and application of concepts, check. So I know that I've got my 3 subtopics properly broken down. The next thing that I can do is start filling in some of my first column items. And so I did that for all of them, including my counterclaims. So the counterclaim to each one is there. And I plan on using either a rebuttal transition, or in one spot, I even said use points below to refute. So I know that for this one, I'm going to use all of this to refute my counterclaim. And that's a good way to make that notation just to yourself so you have that reminder. For other counterclaims, I went ahead and I put in the full thing, and I even included some actual information from some of my sources. So those points or reasons that you have to support this specific subtopic, it's like breaking the subtopic into more subtopics. And trust me, you will thank me for this later. The next part is more time consuming. You might need to go through these sources and find the data that supports the specific point for this specific subtopic. It does come from a source, hopefully vetted. So if you're looking at anything in the center column, whether you are on the counterclaim or the topic, it is going to be that relevant evidence. As you can see, I haven't found anything for this one yet. But here, I've got quite a bit prepped for the counterclaim, and I actually have some for this area as well, and again some more. So that is going to help us with our next steps. So with these sources, with these pieces of data that you're finding, it does need to come from a source, hopefully a vetted, peer-reviewed source. If you find something online that you think might be included in an academic article somewhere, try finding the academic article using clues from the online source. This is your lateral reading skills put to good use. Once you have a more reliable source, or the best one you can find through that did halfway decent on the crap test evaluations, you can put your information, data, or expert opinion in the relevant evidence column. You'll need to do this for any counterclaims as well. I want to encourage you to put in-text citations as you see in my samples. With each piece of relevant evidence or anything that you pull from a source. And it doesn't matter if you put it in the rebuttal column, it doesn't matter if you put it in the explanation column. If you are using something from a source, you had better have an in-text citation. I'm also going to encourage you to put either a Q, a P, or an S, quote, summary, paraphrase, with that information. And I will make clear the why in a little bit later. You will thank me for this one. After you've done this, you can write out your quick notes or thoughts on how this piece of information validates your claim. That would be your explanation and evaluation. So if you're doing the rebuttal, you could write it on how it is not as accurate as one might think with your solid evidence you provide for your side. Right here, I have everything that is being taught is required, and they will have to figure out the technology aspects as they go. I then list out the types of software that's encountered, and this is across the board depending on which campus you're at. And then my quick notes was, yes, they do need to understand the technology. However, they do not need to feel like they're alone in navigating these online waters of the various software packages used. They already have enough to handle just enrolling and learning new content. Our job is to help them navigate and guide them through the new aspects that come with this new environment. And I have a source and I remember reading it, but I have to find it. So I've left myself that note that I have to find it. And this is pretty much a paraphrase of what this source says. And yet, I still have to find it. So that's my cue that I'm missing an in-text citation and I do need to dig through my sources before I write the paper. Really great way to keep yourself on track. So after you've done all of this, go ahead, fill in as much as you can, and then you can come back and you can watch the rest of this lecture. Now, if you're one of those who wants to know the why behind everything, you can watch it now to understand why each step is so important and key to your success. If that is what it takes to motivate you to complete this as it's laid out, then that is what I suggest you do. The rest of you, I'll see you in a little bit. Go ahead and pause the video now or continue on. All right, now that you have some of this completed, let's see what you have. I'm going to pull up my sample and working on, this is for my own coursework, and I want you to be able to see how it actually applies to argumentative writing. So as you can see from my sample, I do have some work to do, like this, empty, 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 empty. So I know I have some work that I need to do, and that's okay. Let's start with what I did well. I do have a strong thesis, and I was able to break it up into those blueprints for each subtopic. I also did a great job of finding information for my counterclaims. Look at this. That counterclaim's good. That counterclaim is doubly good. That counterclaim is pretty good too. So I know I did really good with that opposition, and I can just focus on my stance now. I didn't do so well for finding information for my first actual subtopic, though. If you look at this, I have no information. As a matter of fact, I think I might need this point, like the actual subtopic itself, I may need to just leave that out. This might be part of my narrowed topic, not my blueprint of reasons. Well, if that's the case, I need to move this somewhere else. Visuals and videos instead of just text and written content. I think I'm going to cut that. There we go. Copy and cut. I think it's going to go really well with the universal design aspect. So I'm going to throw that in here. And now I can actually kind of see, okay, now I'm looking for visuals and videos and how that applies to universal design. I think that's going to work a little bit better. So, of course, it means I'm going to have to rework my thesis before I write this paper. So I better leave myself a note. Let's see. I'm going to go to review, new comment. Awesome. So now I have that signal. I can go back when I'm doing the review and I can fix that before I write the paper. Now we can look over my subtopics and see how balanced they actually are. Let's see. Yeah, that first one, that subtopic's gonna have to go. Either that or I have to do a lot of work. If I look here, I've got quite a bit for the counterclaims. And an okay start for my actual supports here. And again, I have one counterclaim here, and I've got some actual starts here that are pretty good. And they're rather balanced to begin with. I just need to find some more data. So next, let's see how I did balancing out my paper with the quotes, paraphrases, and summaries. Remember, you want to try and limit your quotes to approximately one solid quote per subtopic, maybe two if the wording is just that strong. Doing this helps to ensure that you're finding a good balance between your written voice and that of your sources. After all, you're the star of this piece. Your writing voice should be the headliner, not the backup dancer. So let's take a look at what I've got. And I put them in red. So I've got paraphrase or summary here, paraphrase or summary here, and a list here, which means that I am paraphrasing or summarizing. So that's a pretty good balance right there. If I go up here, I've got a quote and a quote right after it. Yeah, that may not be quite as good. Two quotes in a row, depends on how it plays out. That could put me a little quote heavy. What about down here? I have a paraphrase, I have a summary, and I have a quote. Well, that's actually a pretty excellent balance going on. What about yours? How well are your quotes balanced out with your paraphrases and your summaries? Are you there enough? One of the other ways to use this is to see if your sources themselves are balanced out. So let's make sure I use a variety of sources instead of relying too heavily on just one or two. That could imply that there's bias or that I didn't do enough research. So let's see what I've got. Right here with this one, I took a quote, and where's the author? Right here. Cormer and White and Cormer and White. I'm wondering how often I use this. So I'm going to use my Control F, and I'm just going to do Cormer and White. I used them 4 times, and I can even look to see how close. Ooh, yeah, those are all pretty close together. So I may need to balance those out with a few other sources. Well, did I use any other sources anywhere? Oh, hey, I've got one here. I've got a Carvalho de Sousa article. This one comes out of Brazil, actually. The source that is missing somewhere in my data that I still have to find, okay, and a personal list that came from actual experience, as I would be considered an expert in my field. That would be another source altogether. So now I've got 3 sources that are all different in this one area. Pretty good balance, especially compared to down here where I didn't do so good. Look at this, Cormer and White, Cormer and White, Cormer and White. So I have one source, and student reflections and samples from discussion boards. That's the only other source I have there. I think I may need to expand just a little bit. Finally, the last really important component is that this is still manipulative. That means that you can move items around if you decide that something fits better elsewhere. As you saw, I did a copy and a paste. Well, what if I decide to move an entire segment? What if I want all these counterclaims together? Because I'm going to get rid of this subtopic right here. Let's go ahead and do a copy. And instead, I've got a better idea. So instead of this, I'm going to just label this as counterclaims. And I can take that segment out and come down here. And I can copy. I can even X those out. And I can go right here, give myself a new line, and paste everything. And so all of a sudden, this becomes my counterclaims. I can take this entire table out. I know that I'm not going to do counterclaims in front of each one because I just want to do them up front. So this becomes subtopic 1 and subtopic 2. Maybe I do want to leave that one counterclaim because that actually does slide pretty nicely. So we're just going to do that. Again, you can make this what you want and how it's going to fit best for your paper. So the really great thing about being able to move these items around is that you can play with the basic construct that I provided for you to find a way to fit your style and your needs while still benefiting from the same construct you would get from the index card game. You can also hand this off to a partner and ask them if they would move anything. They could then draw you arrows if they have a physical document on where they would move something to, or if they have a digital, they could leave you probing questions using the comments in Word. No matter what, this is a very useful tool, and I want you to take this and make it your own. This is here for your benefit. It's not just a check-in point in the class. It's not just something that you turn in. It's something that you take and make your own so that your writing can benefit and flourish. Any of these constructs are really good to use for your organization. Any of them are going to benefit you. As long as you're planning out your essay, you're going to do better and you're going to be able to meet that page length requirement better. Again, I want you to pick one that's going to fit your learning style and the way your brain works. And I want you to pick one that you will be able to utilize to the best of your ability, whatever that particular graphic organizer might look like. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, do not hesitate to reach out to your professor using the Learning Management Inbox system. All right, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the flip side.